Om Jnanatirmirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya, what comes after that? Prabhu Nitya? Prabhu. Here in Croatia it's Prabhu, but in India it's Prabhu, not Prabhu. Just a point of pronunciation. Prab, not pra. That's a short A and long A. Can make a lot of difference. Just like there's a lot of difference between Vasudeva and Vasudev. One is the father and one is the son. So, as you're saying this word many times in prayer to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it's not a bad idea to pronounce it more correctly. So, this afternoon I plan to speak on a motley variety of subjects, as various devotees have come to me with various points that they wanted to be discussed, and there are a few points which I also want to discuss myself. So I'll try to go through them slippity quick. I don't think there's any translation for that in Croatian, but I'm sure you translated it very well. You got the essence. So yesterday in the questions and answers session, the first question was about the nature of language, how every word is Krishna. Personally, I found the question very enlivening. Who asked that question? You asked that question. You should go and join our research institute, but you have to learn English first. It's another language. Krishna understands all languages. So the understanding of everything, which roughly gets thrown into the bag called philosophy, begins with epistemology, of understanding how we understand. We can't even begin to understand how we understand unless we understand a language. So we have to accept, we can't start off from a position of absolute ignorance and attempt to gain knowledge. When we speak or write, when we use language, we accept as axiomatic that other people can understand what we're saying. I spoke a few points about that, how Krishna who is the super soul, the Paramatma in everyone's heart. Matasmriti jnanam apohanam cha. Understanding or misunderstanding both come from Him. All intelligence comes from Him. The intelligence to remember Him comes from Him. And the intelligence of brilliant atheists who make very intelligent philosophical constructs to deny the reality of the personality of Godhead also comes from Him. Actually, there's no such thing as an intelligent atheist. Prabhupada was once asked about, what about a sincere atheist? And Prabhupada said, it's like talking about an honest thief. If someone is sincere, they should be seeking for the truth. And if they're sincerely seeking for the truth, they must accept the simple fact that there must be a supreme controller. Anyway, we're getting you see, even the very first questions of how do we understand what we understand, it requires so many perspectives from so many different angles. So, in philosophy, the first step is epistemology. But you could spend your whole life just on that and never come to an end. You at one time, Gokul Chandra, you were going to research the subject of pramana and just, make a little research and present it. There we are. There's matter finished. And then you realize that if you had 50,000 lifetimes, you couldn't come to the end of it. So, for everyone, including atheists, in philosophy, we have to at some point accept certain axioms, or we accept certain points that they're mutually accepted to be tenable, and then we go on to, otherwise we can't build any thesis. But if we accept the Arohana, actually we don't accept the Arohana Pantha, but the climbing method of trying to climb up the mountain of knowledge, which is the only method accepted by mundane academicians. That's why they're mundane. They accept as a sacred principle that there is nothing sacred. It is an inviolable principle in their stupid minds. And any failure to accept the principle of inviolable materialism is considered a heretic and is banned from academia. So, but anyway, even if we are to make a thesis, which is their way of doing things, a thesis or a hypothesis of something that could possibly explain what we perceive. The hypothesis of Krishna is quite tenable. It's, in this context, it means philosophically possible. That there is a supreme intelligence who is conscious of everything and everyone, and whose consciousness links together everyone else's consciousness. So that when one person says something, someone else is able to understand what he says, although it's some sounds which represent a concept within the mind of the person who is speaking, is able to communicate that abstract concept to someone else. So anyway, that's a very big topic which I won't pursue further here. And again, it requires much more research to understand the intricacies of it. In trying to understand the intricacies, various philosophers come up with various theories, which by the grace of Krishna's Maya, all of which may seem to be tenable. Therefore, to understand the actual fact requires inspired intelligence, transcendental intelligence, that is supplied by Krishna. Divya Gyan Hriday Prakashito. The spiritual knowledge is revealed within the heart. It's not, spiritual knowledge is revealed within the heart. It is not simply a matter of cramming information. I sat, I studied, I passed my exam, I am now a Bhakti Shastri. But this, by this method, one may become the possessor of a certificate saying that one is a Bhakti Shastri. But it doesn't necessarily mean that transcendental knowledge has been revealed to the person within the heart. So to present the actual understanding of reality as given in Srimad Bhagavatam, in refutation of all incorrect philosophies, in refutation or in fulfillment of incomplete philosophy. It's not necessarily that all philosophies of the world are totally incorrect, but because they're not properly linked with the absolute truth who is Krishna, they may be imperfect. Just like, for instance, Srila Prabhupada accepted the theory of communism. He was very much against communism as it was manifest in the world at the time. He considered it a blight upon humanity. You got that word, blight, now? But he proposed the theory of spiritual communism, that all living beings are equal on the spiritual level. It's not just human beings, but real communism should take into account the interests of living beings, even in the bodies of bugs. So to present the perfect exposition of the absolute truth, which is given in Srimad Bhagavatam, in refutation of imperfect ideas, in refutation of fulfillment of imperfect ideas, it is required that some devotees take up philosophical research and understand the intricacies of various faulty philosophies and show the perfect philosophy of Srimad Bhagavatam, for which purpose Srila Prabhupada founded the Bhaktivedanta Institute, primarily to counteract the misleading science, but also on all intellectual fronts, the philosophical misunderstanding. Recently, at a Shravana Kirtana camp like this in South India, I was presented a series of questions on the nature of Brahmanism and Vaishnavism and the practical application within the modern world. And about an hour into answering the questions, I noticed that most of the devotees looked completely lost. And at that time, we all decided that we should have two types of camps. One for devotees who like hearing and chanting and Haribol and that's all, which is fine, very good. Those who like to chant Hare Krishna and dance and be happy, welcome. But for those who want to go more deeply into philosophical issues, there should be a separate meeting for them. Because when I was answering these questions, I saw after an hour or so, I wasn't even looking, and I saw everyone like staring. So when I stopped answering the questions at that point, then a few devotees were very disappointed, because generally we discuss at a very simple level, but there are other devotees who want to go into the intricacies of philosophical understanding, who find their understanding being nourished by that. We do meet various people with various outlooks, and our own thinking leads us to consider various points that we read about in Prabhupada's books. So to discuss all these points and get clearer understanding is helpful if we are to meet with various intellectual people, which Srila Prabhupada personally did. I mean, if you see the conversations that Prabhupada had with non-devotees, he wasn't much interested in meeting film stars or people who are just famous for some useless thing, but he met with authors, professors, intellectuals. So in India also we often meet representatives of other sampradayas, Vaishnav, non-Vaishnav sampradayas, who are deeply studied in the philosophy of their own sampradaya, and they often have questions of us on a level that requires some knowledge of their understanding and a deep and lucid understanding of our own understanding. And of course, in these countries also, that we should meet with various leaders of society and discuss with them these various points by which they will feel satisfied that our Krishna conscious movement is not simply sentimental, but that we can present answers to their deepest questions. Now, of course, Srila Prabhupada was not, he was a great philosopher, but he was more also. He certainly wasn't an armchair philosopher, sitting around and talking impracticality. As one member of the Ramanuja Sampradaya said, I've come and studied so many years Vishishtadvait, Dvaitadvait, and I want to help teach all your members. So Prabhupada said, you see, people nowadays, they don't have much inclination for all these things. So Prabhupada said, we're teaching them Bhagavad Gita as it is. Prabhupada said, if you want, you can teach, but mostly we're teaching Bhagavad Gita as it is. And Srila Prabhupada is very concerned to demonstrate that this philosophy has practical application for the benefit of human society. He was very concerned to establish communities in which devotees could live according to this philosophy, and in this way demonstrate its efficacy, that Krishna consciousness is not some otherworldly pie in the sky. You got that? Otherworldly means like someone...
Yes, I know the word.
Someone, yeah, and then pie in the sky means it's just like that. It's rabbit's feathers, horse's eggs, flowers growing in the sky. It's like that. Every language has its... What is it? Pie in the sky. Pie in the sky is English. Akasha Pushpa is Sanskrit. Flowers in the sky. Gauriya is Bengali. It means horse's eggs. What is it? Tamil? You don't know Tamil.
Creation is grapes on the tree.
Oh yeah, like you do. Grapes on. Were you there in Udupi when Ryush? He said someone brought a pineapple, and I was surprised. How you get a pineapple here? And he said, oh, he brought it from his own tree, from his own pineapple tree. I mean, pineapples don't grow on trees. There's no such thing as a pineapple tree. He didn't know. He's a Delhi boy, city boy. You weren't there, no? No. They grow on a medium-sized plant on the ground like this. So, Srila Prabhupada, he wanted to present Krishna consciousness very practical, because people who consider themselves very practical, they think that religion is just some mumbo-jumbo with no practical meaning in the world. It is the opium of the people, said Karl Marx. Opium, you take opium and then you just sail away to another world which doesn't exist. So Karl Marx, he gave this idea that people, they're just dreaming of a better another place which doesn't exist. So let's see what's going on here. This is reality. And his theory was to make this world a better place. That is tangible. There may or may not be another world, but this world is tangible. We're definitely here now, so let's do something about it. So to show that, Srila Prabhupada had various reasons for wanting to establish devotional communities. But one reason is to show that the teachings of Bhagavad Gita, they are not simply concerned with another world which we cannot ascertain whether or not it exists from our present platform, but it also gives direction by which we can live relatively peacefully in this insane world. So our Krishna conscious movement has much work to do on many fronts. It's meant to be a movement, like a river. If it keeps on moving, then it's always fresh, unless you have so much effluent from the factories coming into it. So unless the movement keeps on moving, unless it's dynamic, it tends to become stagnant. And also, we don't need effluent from the factories of people's the mental concoction factory. The various materialistic people, they have factories that only produce effluent. In everything they speak is simply polluted. So, reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all is beneficial to the world, and all the Mayavadi, Prakriti Sahajya, grossly materialistic, etc., pollution has to be kept out. Otherwise, instead of being purified by the flow of the river back to Godhead, then we become polluted. So, as I said, I'd speak on various subjects, as various devotees had asked me various things to speak about. Bhavananda Rai Prabhu, you were going to write down a question for me, something about pride, was it? Did you write that down? Or do you want to? You have that now?
Envy, you wanted to ask about envy.
Yeah. Do you have it written down, or do you want to say it now? Oh, well, it's not very helpful, is it? Anyway, you can speak it.
Once a devotee in the temple, he was talking about envy.
A devotee in the temple was talking about envy.
So his question is, where did this envy start? Where does it come from?
Where does envy come from?
The origin.
What is the origin of it? Well, whatever the origin is, you want to know what knowing the end of it is more important. The origin of everything is Krishna. Krishna is not envious of anyone. As Prabhupada translates this Samoham Sarva Bhuteshu, I envy no one, Krishna said. But envy is the perverted reflection of love. That's all. Our natural position is to love Krishna. When we don't want to love Krishna, then we envy Krishna. When we envy Krishna, then we envy everyone else also. And we envy ourselves also. We become inimical to our own self-interest. There's also envy in the spiritual world, but it's pure. That sounds contradictory, doesn't it? Because the very nature of envy is that it's most impure. But what would appear to be in this world envious dealings are, in the spiritual world, they are dealings which nourish devotees' love for Krishna. A crucial part of the plot in the eternal drama, Lila means drama, of Vrindavan, is the rivalry between the groups of gopis headed by Radha and by Chandravali. So there is apparent envy in the spiritual world. Krishna apparently doesn't like demons. He states in Bhagavad Gita that he throws them into, what is that? Murha janmani janmani mama prapya. What is that verse? How does that begin? Tanaham dvishita kruran samsareshu naradamam shipami. I throw them ajasram without cessation. There's no way for them to come back. I throw them into hell. Those are envious, rascal demons. I throw them into hell. They don't attain me. They take birth again and again among the animal and lower species. It sounds like Krishna really doesn't like them. And it's a fact, he really doesn't like them. People are envious of his devotees. Krishna loves his devotees, and he really doesn't like at all those who are envious of his devotees. But then that same Krishna comes as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he delivers even the most envious demons. So that was a question about envy. And you had suggested, Bhavananda Rai Prabhu had suggested, that we discuss these topics more often. We need to discuss them more often. Because we're all subject to these impurities. Kutasva kashmelam. How have these impurities come? Where have they come from? Literally means, where have they come from? Where have all these impurities come from? The principal manifestation of envy is lust, which is another topic we need to talk about more. It's not the most popular topic to discuss, although it's a topic or a feature that's with us all the time. And we need to discuss it regularly, because really what is there between us and Krishna? Why are we not Yugayatam, what is that? Nayanam Galadra Shuddharya. Why are tears not pouring from our eyes when we're chanting Hare Krishna? This science fiction, they have the idea you just go through some corridor, or you just flip into another dimension. There's simultaneous universes which we can't perceive, but then if we can just get the technology or the technique and we can just flip into another dimension. So actually, that is the situation. Krishna is everywhere. If we had the eyes to see it, then we'd see the spiritual world everywhere. So what separates us from Krishna is desire. The key to go into that dimension, the dimension of love of Krishna, is to love Krishna. So it's just a matter of desire. Perverted desire keeps us in the material world, and pure desire, if we have pure desire, then immediately we are in the spiritual world. It's not even a matter of being transferred to the spiritual world. If there is pure desire, we are in the spiritual world. So that impure desire, which is the manifestation of envy for Krishna, that manifests as material lust. Yeah, material lust or material desire, we can say. They're almost synonyms. They can be almost synonyms. But in Sanskrit also, karma, it means desire, or specifically it means sexual desire. So lust, generally it can mean just desire, but it generally means sexual desire. Even if it refers to other desire other than sexual, I'm talking about the English language now. Lust means a strong and base desire. Strong, base, and unintelligent. Gross, unintelligent, unreasonable. And gives the idea that to fulfill it, that we can do anything, which is, we don't care for others. So he may speak of the lust for wealth or the lust for power. Now, all the problems of the world come from lust. All the problems in our spiritual life come from lust. All the problems in ISKCON come from lust. What is the solution? Most devotees here, it seems, the Croatian devotees are very upset over various issues concerning our ISKCON society. And they want to see change, which is a good idea. Some change is needed. However, if we see philosophically, we should understand where kutastva kashmalamidam, where have these impurities come from? Or how more pertinent is what's Arjuna's question? Kama esha, krodha esha. How does that begin? Why do good people do bad things? How does that begin? That verse? It's a very important verse, which I'm not remembering just now, obviously. Why do we do? Now we're all stuck. Anyway.
What does one perform sinful acts that is forced?
Yeah, okay. I have my Bhagavad. Oh, I left it in the room. Yeah, why do we? Baladiva niyojita. Why, as if by force, we perform activities which we don't even want to. But why do we do them? Atakena prayukto yam papam charati purushaha anichamapi varshnaya baladiva niyojitaha. By what? We perform sinful activities, and even though we don't want to, anichanapi, as if by force, as if it's like we can't control ourselves. So the famous answer is Kama Esha, Krodha Esha, Rajoguna Samudbhavaha, Mahashano Mahapama Vidyena Mehavayanu. Actually, the answer is one word, Kama, and the rest of the verse is an extrapolate. It further explains that. In one word, the answer is Kama. And then from Kama comes Krodha. It's born from Rajoguna. It is it's like a great fire which consumes us, greatly sinful, and we should know this to be our enemy. So, what number verse is that? 3? So that is our enemy. That we find is present with us. Everywhere we go, everything we do. We're always conscious. If we're not conscious of Krishna, then we are in Maya. And Maya means material desire. And the prominent manifestation of material desire is sexual desire, which expands into various other desires, such as the desire for prestige, which causes envy. Ask about envy. If we desire, I shall be noticed, I shall be respected, I shall be honored, then we become envious of those who are noticed, respected, and honored more than ourselves. And we are envious of those who are respected, honored, noticed, respected, or honored as much as ourselves. And we're envious of those even who are noticed, respected, or honored even less than ourselves, because we're afraid they'll come up and overtake us. We're envious of anyone who's respected, honored, or noticed, because we think all of that should be for me. Thus we become envious of everyone. So the desire for honor, prestige, wealth, all of these are expansions of the enviousness of Krishna. Yeah, and particularly as lust, sexual desire. Yeah, so we need to discuss this because so many problems in our society are caused by this. In our society, in all of human society. In the modern world, thanks to one gentleman, or not very gentleman, called Herr Freud, largely due to him, attitudes towards sexual behavior have largely changed to those in traditional society. We used to hear about the sexual revolution. We don't hear about it much nowadays because it's over. It's successful. With the advent of mass contraceptives and people don't like to talk about it. It's considered taboo. Yeah, one of the things, prior to the sexual revolution, it was considered taboo to even discuss these topics. Okay, speak loudly for 1 or 2 minutes. It was considered taboo to even discuss these topics, but not so among transcendentalists, among Vedantists. We see Vedantists, there are two main branches, the Advaitavadis, headed by Shankaracharya, and the Vaishnavas. So they discuss these topics, but in a very different way to which they're discussed in the modern age. The Vedantists understand that sexual desire is the cause of our bondage in this material world. And the modern psychology, Freudian and post-Freudian, whatever, they think that sex is the very means or the very meaning of our living in this world. So the contraception, the acceptance of abortion, gender roles, how men and women are expected to behave, women's liberation, acceptance of homosexuality, of divorce, of men and women living together without being married, of open sexual behavior like kissing in public, and so on, ad nauseum. This is the result of the sexual revolution. So we live in a very different world to that, even in terms of perspectives on sex, the whole big topic, sex, than even 50 years ago or 100 years ago is quite different all over the world. And it is widely propagated and believed that the world is much better for that. Although not everyone believes that. For instance, if we look at the psychology of why certain Muslims perform acts that are called terrorist acts, it's not simply they do have some ideology behind it. That they don't want the hedonistic materialism coming from the West simply to overrun their culture. This is one of the reasons that 2 presidents of America have justified their military presence in Muslim countries, for they want to liberate the women, because they consider that it's the right of women to be prostitutes, more or less, than to do what they like, whenever they like, however they like, with no with minimal sexual restrictions, rather than being sexually restricted. And certain Muslims are very upset about this because they see that it just destroys their whole culture. They have religious reasons for believing that the way women are regulated in their religious culture is correct, and the prostitute culture is not correct. So I'm not an advocate of terrorist acts. Please don't misunderstand. Nor am I necessarily a supporter of the of what might be considered an Islamic concept of gender roles. I'm just making the point here that, well, not everyone in the world is convinced that the sexual revolution was beneficial for mankind. Although generally in the Western world it's considered that now we got it right. After centuries of getting it wrong, now we got it right. Now it's better. Now that women are allowed to have abortions, and there are several thousand all over the world every day, it's better. Life is better. That many children grow up without having a fixed father or mother figure in their life. That's okay, because people's individual freedom is more important than children's right to have parents, not just biological parents. But the Vedic perspective, which is actually that's similar in all traditional religious cultures, is that the sexual tendency requires to be regulated within religious marriage. Actually, marriage means religious marriage. It's only later that it became it became primarily a legal matter than a religious matter. It is considered a vow taken in the Church of God, or with vows to God. It's considered a sacred vow. And with marriage goes a whole set of behavioral norms, such as that, for instance, a wife of one man doesn't laugh and joke with the husband of another man, and is in fact very careful in her dealings with any other men, and a tendency towards zero with most men. For instance, in Vedic culture, among the higher class families, there would be separate living quarters for men and women. So even in married life, the men and women, they wouldn't mix very much. It's not that husband and wife have to be together all day and night. Even in married life there's restriction, even between husband and wife. And even that men will look at women, women will look at men. That's why the burqa is there. And first of all, the women don't go out, and if they do go out, they have the burqa. Croatians, they all know that. Bosnians know what it means. Indians know what it means. It's I think Americans also know what it means now. Because that's why they're in Iraq and Afghanistan. To get all those women out in their bikinis. Forget the burqa. You know what it means from Bosnia. Burqa means like a cloak which covers the whole body.
Pokrivač koji prekriva cijelo tijelo.
Some of them they have like that, like a netting also. So these are obviously very different outlooks on gender roles. And the Vedic culture is one of restriction. Restriction is required because without that, there's going to be trouble. Unless men and women are restricted in their behavior. If there's free mixing, then there will be the possibility of fall down increases tremendously. As we see within our ISKCON society, for instance, it's not only in ISKCON, but it's everywhere that fall down is sexual fall down a man with someone else's wife or whatever. It's quite common. Divorce is considered normal within ISKCON, which reflects the larger society. And it's much easier to go along with the norms of the modern society. It's a big effort to control the senses, right? And it's a big effort to train people to think and act in a way differently to that of the broader society. So the easy way is to just act according to the norms, chant Hare Krishna and act according to the norms of the broader society. And as far as trying to stop divorce and all this kind of thing, I mean, it seems to be too difficult. Of course, this wasn't Srila Prabhupada's idea. Srila Prabhupada wanted to show how Krishna consciousness, as I was saying, it works on a practical level. It's not simply some otherworldly idea. He wanted to create brahmanas, ideal people who by their behavior would naturally be looked up to by members of the broader society. They'd naturally be looked up to for their ideal behavior. But that is not possible if, and we talk a lot about Vaishnava behavior and relationships and all this and that, but it's not going to have that much effect if you're a very polite, cultured, kind debauchee. It doesn't mean much, does it? Yeah, rascal, that's a good word. Is that what you said?
Yes, I understood. I corrected myself. I understood wrong.
So if at all we are to stop the tide of rampant fall down within our society, then we have to adjust the way the sexes interact. We can't expect to behave like karmis and then have a different result. If a man other than the husband of a woman makes friendships, starts to joke with her and this and that, we should immediately know this is not proper. It's going to lead to fall down. If it goes to its natural course, it's going to lead to gross fall down. So that should be nipped in the bud. But in every case, Maya is such that everyone thinks, no, nothing can happen. They're both good devotees. It's a little unusual, but it's not so bad. And then, even if someone says something to either of the parties concerned, they say, no, it's nothing like that. We're just friends, that's all. I really appreciate her devotional service. And just for service, we have to have some interaction like that. And then the knot on the heart becomes stronger. That's Maya's business. So if it's not nipped in the bud, then it becomes a very hard knot and very difficult to break. As we have seen, sometimes you can, physically, by order, separate two parties who should not be coming close to each other according to proper norms. Physically, okay, you go there, 1,000 kilometers away, go away. But after 1 year, 2 years, still that attachment remains. They come back and... Right? You know. Jnanam avritya dehinam. The conditioned soul, his knowledge is covered by lust. So even if someone has a Bhakti Shastri degree and they can write a wonderful essay on how lust, karma, the effects of karma, they'll just be totally covered themselves. Therefore, within cultured society, not only Vedic society, but any society which has any real culture, including Islamic society, and at least in that respect, I mean, there's cultures there. There are strict restrictions on interaction between the sexes, which in modern liberated society people think is very strange and very wrong. And many of our devotees also, they think that this is something wrong. And they even think that Prabhupada is wrong in some way. When they can't accept it, then they blame Prabhupada. On the other hand, we see that those religious groups, even if they're philosophical and religious groups that are strong on this point of that lust should be controlled, even if they don't have a very deep philosophical understanding of it, they're able to keep themselves intact. They maintain their identity as Orthodox Jews or Amish. How is that pronounced? Amish?
Amish.
Amish. I heard it pronounced both ways. I thought an American might know. It's pronounced both ways? Amish, yeah. Yeah, people respect them because they stick to they haven't adopted anything from modern society.
What?
So even though philosophically they may not have a very strong understanding of the nature of God, and they eat meat and so many things, but on this point they understand and they follow that, and they're able to maintain their identity. So what I'm suggesting here is that if our society is told to be saved from its helter-skelter tumble into materialism and modernism, then we have to halt it and adopt different behavioral norms. Sorry for the complexity of the sentence. We can't have a society which is sexually loose and have a pure consciousness. By sexually loose, I don't mean that everyone's just, what do they have, this wife-swapping parties? I know it's not anywhere near that bad. I don't think they even had that in Croatia. Didn't get that bad yet. But they don't even bother having, that's out of date now because they don't even bother having wives, so where's the question of wife-swapping? No, but what might seem to be innocent exchanges can be the cause of fall down. For instance, just to bring the point home right here in Lika today, it might not seem so bad, but it's not so conducive for our Krishna consciousness that men and women all stand together in line for prasadam. Just for instance. And one man is sitting down right next to someone else's wife with maybe half a millimeter in between them. Maybe not even that much. Touching each other. So obviously it's easier to serve prasadam like that. But it's, I'm not coming in here and trying to condemn you all to hell. But I'm just trying to bring this discussion from the theoretical to the practical. That due to the norms of modern society, we also among our devotees think we don't even think, that's the problem. If one man is sitting physically next to another man's wife, and neither of them think that there's anything wrong, then there's something wrong. I just happened to notice it this afternoon. And therefore it's required that there are systems and education to avoid this kind of thing. If at all our society is to ever stop this rot of illicit sex and divorce and on and on and on, abortions. It does go on among initiated devotees in ISKCON. Sorry to say. Rape, child abuse, lust. Well, anyway, lust is the disease. The ultimate disease is envy of Krishna, but that manifests as sexual lust. And it is unrealistic to think that just by talking about the pastimes of Krishna, without any endeavor to regulate our mode of living, that we can just bypass sexual desire. Gaur-Kishore Das Babaji and Vangshi Das Babaji Maharaj were both avadhuts. They didn't follow any regulations, even of spiritual life. The regulation was that they were always thought of Krishna. They were completely pure devotees. But even though they didn't follow any other scriptural rules or even social rules, they never had anything even resembling any illicit or any other connection with women. So that's instructive, isn't it? They're above all rules and regulations. They could mix with any number of women, and it wouldn't make any difference to their own spiritual life. And they weren't acting as acharyas, so they didn't take it upon themselves to act in a way that, by their behavior, they'd teach disciples to follow. But still in this matter, they were very strict. So, anyway, it's a big subject. How should we behave? Generally, matrivat paradareshu. We should see all women other than one's own wife as a mother. But it's not so close like a son to a mother with most women. There should be some... the point is that they should be respected as mothers, not that there's intimacy. People who are opposed to this idea, including many devotees in our movement, say, well, this is unnatural, it's artificial. That's true. It's restrictions ordained by Shastra. They are, they're an imposition on the natural tendency. But the natural tendency of the jiva in the material world is a perverted tendency. So restrictions have to be accepted so that we can redirect our perverted tendency toward the actually natural tendency, which is to love Krishna. So much guidance is required in this. Still, in much of India, it's even without it being directly taught, it's still in the culture, it's just kind of imbibed and understood. But it seems to have been totally not lost, but thrown out in the West, actually deliberately thrown out. So that in the modern West it's considered normal, natural and proper that, for instance, so many things I already said. Children, they grow up and their mother has one boyfriend after another and like this.
Right.
Abortion is normal. Sexually illicit behavior is normal. Child marriage is banned, but child pregnancy is normal and considered okay. The government supports it by funding it. If parents want to get their children married, they'll marry. At 14, the government will stop it. But if the girl gets pregnant, they'll pay her for that. Not in this country, but in many countries, they pay girls to get, if they have children outside marriage. And they consider this the triumph of Western civilization. This is now we reach the zenith of human civilization. But it's finished. This society is finished. It's decadent, and no decadent society can stand. Going on for some time. They have some momentum, but this arrogance of thinking that all of society up till now is wrong. Now we got it right, when that society is socially a total disaster. So those who are convinced of this, they will want to introduce different modes of living so that we can be Krishna conscious. And I find it absurd that we want to talk about intimate leelas and all this kind of thing when our own devotees they can't even act like moral human beings. That should be the first thing. That should be the first thing that's inculcated. Otherwise, we become prakrita sahajiyas. We're talking about high topics and and morality, no morality. So, definitely those who want to implement such things, they will be vilified. Especially they'll be called misogynist, which is a word I learned when I learned this word when it was applied to myself, because the idea that society should be regulated so that women, the majority of women, should not live in a manner that in civilized society would be called prostitutes, is considered an affront against women. That women have the freedom to pose for pornography, that's considered their right, but it's an affront on the dignity of all of womankind, and it's totally degrading to the whole of human society. I mean, that's gross. Pornography is gross. But even to dress in short skirts, tight t-shirts, this is not human civilization. This is subhuman. And the result is unwanted children, unwanted populace, so that every generation it becomes more and more degraded. Anyway, I've spoken on these things many times. It requires to be spoken about a lot more than is spoken about, because we're all affected by lust. Who can deny? I mean, there have been devotees in our movement who have said, I am free from lust. I remember one devotee said, a very prominent devotee, I am free from Maya. It didn't last long. Fell down from his high position into the deep, dark hole of another man's wife. So we should all be careful. And institutionally we need to be much more careful also. So, what to do about all this? Well, at least in our own, among the householders, last year we had a householders meeting, right? So, among the householders, the community, as I was saying, Prabhupada wanted to establish communities. So, what are the norms for householders to interact? These should be discussed and implemented as far as possible. Points like this, men and women, if not husband and wife, sitting right next to each other. I mean, it shouldn't need to be said. That it needs to be said suggests to me that there's a problem there. So, Hare Krishna, there's no time for any questions.
Nema vremena za pitanja.
Arati. Books. Well, Siddhi Sadhana told me he doesn't have enough books to fulfill all the orders, and Daddy Baksha's on holiday at the Adriatic coast, so he can't get any books from him. He can take the orders. Okay. But how are we going to fulfill them? My books. Oh yeah, there are several of my books are newly published in Croatian. They're on the book table outside. You can take them if you have any money left. If you have any money left, you're also welcome to donate it for the festival and for the festival next year. Murari Gupta Prabhu and just a few others take most of the financial incentive, but so it would be appreciated if others could also help with that. It's voluntary donation, no fees festival. Everyone's welcome, but please don't take it for granted also. So if anyone can donate more than they have done, you're also welcome to do so. And last night, how many sets of Prabhupada's books did we theoretically sell? 66 sets of Chaitanya Charitamrita available. But the thing is, we don't have enough. Anyway, those who have come and were not here last night and were not able to take full set, actually it's not full set, but a set of Chaitanya Charitamrita for only 36 kunas or €5, can do so now. And you take the order and it will be fulfilled. Who's going to take the order? Siddhi Sadhana Prabhu, who's out on the book table. All the Croatian devotees know him, right? Everyone knows him. So, please see him. It's a great opportunity. Only €5 for a whole set of books. Very nicely printed. Hare Krishna. We'll now have Arati, and then after that is Prabhupada night. Every night is Prabhupada night, but this one is specific.